Now, when Mr. Robinson was pulled over, the actions of the officer bring even more questions to the case. Yes, Mr. Robinson was a felon, but did the officer know that at the time? The tip only identified a black male in a bluish-green Toyota Camry, loaded a firearm, and concealed it in his pocket. Yes, this black male was leaving a high-crime area, which to me may justify the desire to be armed. Yet look at how the officer treated what should have been a routine traffic stop. After calling in the stop, Officer Hudson approached the driver's side of the vehicle with his weapon drawn but carried below his waist and asked the driver for her license, registration, and proof of insurance. He also asked the male passenger, the defendant Robinson, for his identification, but quickly realized that doing so was probably not a good idea because this guy might have a gun and I'm asking him to get into his pocket to get his ID. Instead, Officer Hudson asked Robinson to step out of the vehicle. Now, I am not an attorney, and I'm not familiar with West Virginia law, but is a passenger in a vehicle who is not wearing a seatbelt issued a citation, or just the driver? Now, if not, what reasonable suspicion does Officer Hudson have that Mr. Robinson has committed a crime, is committing a crime, or is about to commit a crime? That is the requirement for a Terry stop and search. The only thing the officer knows is that the passenger is likely armed, that is, assuming this is the vehicle reported by the tipster. Now, based on this, Officer Hudson approached the vehicle with his weapon drawn, giving those in the vehicle reasonable fear that their life is in imminent danger. I believe that is a trigger in all 50 states for a person to use lethal force to defend themselves. Remember, those in the car have no idea who the officer is or what his intentions are. All they know is that an armed person in uniform is approaching and possibly that he has a drawn weapon. Look at Officer Hudson's reasoning. He asked the passenger for his ID, then realized that this was probably not a good idea. Why? Because this guy might have a gun. Now look at this from the other point of view. They know the officer has a gun. They may even be aware that he has drawn his gun. I wonder how Officer Hudson would have reacted if Mr. Robinson, knowing that he was dealing with an armed law enforcement officer, drew his weapon because he knows the officer is armed. Now, who has a more reasonable, articulable suspicion that their life might be in danger? Is it the officer who is approaching a vehicle with an unknown occupant and the knowledge that the traffic stops go bad? Or is it the passengers who have an unknown armed officer approaching and a knowledge that some officers abuse their position, something especially known to happen to black civilians? Either way, we have a potentially tense situation made worse by the presence of firearms on both sides and the escalation of Officer Hudson drawing his firearm. Then, Captain Roberts enters the picture. At this point, Captain Roberts arrived and opened the front passenger door. As Robinson was exiting the vehicle, Captain Roberts asked him if he had any weapons on him. Instead of responding verbally, Robinson gave Roberts a weird look, as he described it, or more specifically, an "oh crap" look. Robertson took the look to mean, I don't want to lie to you, but I'm not going to tell you anything either. So Mr. Robinson exercises his right to remain silent, but Captain Roberts sees a quote-unquote weird look. Then Captain Roberts begins reading minds. There could be many reasons why Mr. Robinson would have had a weird or an oh crap look. He was in a vehicle stopped by law enforcement, asked for his ID, even though I'm not sure he could be cited for the offense of not wearing a seatbelt. He was asked to exit the car, then asked about weapons. That could easily bring an oh crap look to someone's face. Remember though, even if Mr. Robinson is armed, the police have yet to establish a reasonable suspicion that Mr. Robinson is committing a crime. Now, at this point, Captain Roberts directed Robertson to put his hands on top of the car and performed a frisk for weapons, recovering a loaded gun in the front pocket of Mr. Robinson's pants. Now, after conducting the frisk, Roberts recognized Robinson, recalled that he had previously been convicted of a felony, and arrested him. Only now, after Mr. Robertson has been targeted for an act that was most likely perfectly legal, stopped, asked for ID, asked to exit the vehicle, and frisked, does law enforcement have a reasonable suspicion that Mr. Robinson was committing a crime? Not because he was carrying a firearm, but because Captain Roberts, after conducting the frisk, recognizes Mr. Robinson as a convicted felon. which means the ID and frisk of Mr. Robinson was conducted before police had reasonable suspicion of a crime. That is, unless carrying a firearm is assumed to be a crime until proven otherwise.